Have you ever wondered what you should and shouldn't do after having a compression fracture? If you're healing from one right now, you might feel overwhelmed, trying to figure out how to move safely, how to avoid further injury, and how to get stronger again. The truth is, a compression fracture doesn't have to stop you from living your life. It just requires the right approach. In today's video, we're diving into the must-know do's and don'ts after a compression fracture, practical tips for safe movement, and the best exercises to support your recovery and long-term bone health. I'll also share eye-opening research that shows how a simple exercise routine can drastically reduce your risk of future fractures. So grab a comfortable seat or stand tall, and let's get started on building strength and confidence in your body. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm a BoneFit-certified fitness instructor, a 500-hour trained yoga teacher with additional training that's specific to osteoporosis and yoga, and a nutritional health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I'm on a mission to reduce the number of osteoporotic fractures that happen each year, and I'm so pleased to have you join me in the journey to better bone health. Let's dive into how you can protect your spine and support your healing journey after having a compression fracture. Everything I am suggesting today assumes that you previously consulted with a doctor and that you're at home and in the healing process. Compression fractures can vary significantly in their severity and in their treatment and what a person feels comfortable doing after having one. Did you know that it's possible to have a compression fracture without even realizing it? Sometimes these fractures heal quietly, and you might only discover them years later during a routine x-ray. If this is your case, don't feel bad. Feel grateful. Your body healed and you were spared the pain. But for others, compression fractures are an entirely different experience, causing immediate and often excruciating pain. Every situation is different, and it's really important to look at each situation individually. I have a client who's a caretaker for her husband who has dementia. Her husband was highly mobile and was getting around fine until the day came that he suddenly and unexpectedly wasn't. He had a very serious compression fracture that was 90% compressed. He was in excruciating pain and couldn't move. His situation required surgery and vertebroplasty, which is a surgical procedure where cement is inserted into the spine. Later on in this video, we'll have a look at some statistics around exercise post-compression fracture and vertebroplasty, and I want it clearly understood that I'm not suggesting that someone who needs surgery not have it. There are times and places where surgery is necessary. Again, it's incredibly important to look at your situation individually. Statistics are helpful and insightful, but they don't consider individual circumstances. So as we proceed today, please keep that in mind. In addition to the two extremes that we just talked about, of having no idea that you've had a compression and then experiencing excruciating pain, there's also a whole spectrum of experiences in the middle. If you have or develop a new pain in your back and you know that you have bone loss, please get it checked out. Then you know what you're dealing with, whether or not it's a fracture, and you can use the information in this video to adjust your life accordingly. First off, the number one thing that you must do if you've had a compression fracture is to move safely. This means avoid doing anything that causes your spine to come into a rounded shape. This is generally good advice with bone loss, but after having a compression fracture, it's much more than general good advice. It's essential. What might start out as a relatively small compression fracture can potentially get a lot worse and impair the healing process, while also leading to a lot more pain if you continue coming into a rounded shape with your spine while your compression is healing. This is something that we want to avoid, period. Don't round your spine after having a compression fracture. There's a technique that I learned in my BoneFit training that's called sparing the spine. It involves adjusting how you move to ensure that your spine does not round forward. Rounding backwards to do a small back bend, interestingly, does not generally have a negative effect on the spine, but that's actually a topic for another day. There are two general techniques for sparing your spine. They include the hip hinge and the golfer pickup. Let's take a moment to go over both. To come into the hip hinge, stand with your feet hip width apart to slightly wider than hip width apart. You want to make room to be able to fold forward from your hips without coming into a rounded shape with your spine. Bend both knees, and as you do that, stick your behind out. And then you can see from this position that it's keeping my back from coming into a rounded shape. And then that will allow me to come in and pick up the block and make my way back up to standing. This method can be adapted by bringing one foot forward and then bringing one leg down to the ground. This can be a way to pick something up that's down on the ground, or potentially to clean something or to do something that you need to do down on the floor. And then from here, you can make your way back up to standing. You can even use this method to get something into your oven that's particularly heavy. In these pictures, you can see me using a chair as an intermediate step between the kitchen counter and my oven. The golfer pickup is another way to reach down and to quickly pick something up off the ground, like a purse, a shopping bag, or even keys that have been accidentally dropped. To come in and do the golfer pickup, step 1 foot forward and use your opposite arm to reach down and to pick up what you're trying to pick up in a way that keeps your back from coming into a rounded shape. If you're interested in learning more about ways to adapt these techniques for your everyday life, I actually have a series of relatively short videos that teach different ways to adapt your daily tasks that protect and spare your spine. There's a playlist on my channel that goes through them, and I will list the playlist in the description below. These videos include how to do tasks like daily cleaning, personal maintenance, and even how to trim toenails. It's especially important for doing things like trimming your toenails post-fracture if you find yourself in a situation where you have to do that at home. If you can afford to go and get a pedicure at a nail salon that you like and trust to be clean, this is a relaxing and wonderful way to have someone else trim your toenails. And if you're within proximity of a podiatrist's office, know that they'll trim your toenails, and it's highly likely that you can get Medicare to pay for it if you live in the US and you have an osteoporosis diagnosis. After you're comfortable with moving safely post-fracture, then it's time to consider what exercises are best to do for your situation. I'm assuming here that you've healed enough that you have a doctor's okay to exercise. With the okay from your doctor, there are exercises that are generally beneficial that can be approached in different ways depending on your situation and what works best in your body. A general rule for exercising post-fracture is to listen to your body, and if anything hurts, stop doing it immediately. If you don't feel pain with an exercise, then move slowly in and out of exercises during your healing process to give your body time to respond and to be in control of your movement. There are several goals with movement post-fracture. We want to reduce the risk of having another fracture, which we'll talk about more momentarily. And we also want to build long-term strength that will help you to improve your bone quality and your strength for the long haul. So if you've had a compression fracture, what's the biggest challenge that you faced while recovering during your compression fracture? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear about your experience and to answer any questions that you have. All right, it's time to talk about the statistics that I mentioned earlier, along with the research that they come from. So the statistics come from a research study that was published in 2008, titled "Significantly Fewer Refractures After Vertebroplasty in Patients Who Engage in Back Extensor Strengthening Exercises," conducted by Huntoon, Schmid, and Sinaki. The findings are interesting, and they shed light on what's most important to focus on with exercise after having a compression fracture. Here are some of the statistical findings from the study. So without exercise, refracture rates after vertebroplasty average just 4 to 5 months. That's a shockingly short time. Remember that vertebroplasty is a surgery where a doctor injects bone cement into the spine to create more stability and also hopefully to reduce pain. The people who underwent vertebroplasty and also participated in an exercise program to strengthen their extensor muscles were likely to go out almost 2.5 years before they had another incidence of refracture. That's a really major thing. That's 5 times longer. That makes it worth doing the exercises in my book. But it gets even better. The people who did not have vertebroplasty and just participated in an exercise program to strengthen their extensor muscles post-compression fracture were likely to go out about 5 years before they had an incidence of refracture. That doubles the 2.5-year time period. That's a really huge thing. These exercises aren't just helpful, they're life-changing. In my opinion, everyone who's had a compression fracture should be encouraged to participate in an exercise program that focuses on strengthening their extensor muscles. So with this knowledge, let's talk about exercises that strengthen your back extensor muscles. These are critical for preventing fractures and for improving your posture. The extensor muscles are 2 long, relatively thin muscles that run alongside your spine on both sides of your vertebrae. They might not be what you think about initially when you think about exercise for osteoporosis. Strengthening these muscles isn't likely to reverse your osteoporosis or to make huge increases to your bone density. But what they can do is to make a huge difference to your posture and to your ability to hold yourself upright with stability. And doing that can significantly reduce your fracture risk while increasing your quality of life. That's a major win, and it's totally worth doing if you've had a compression fracture. Notice from the statistics that it doesn't eliminate your fracture risk, but it reduces it greatly, and it also pushes out the average time period for refracture by years, not the few short months that's the average refracture rate without doing exercises to strengthen the extensor muscles. Plus, it significantly reduces your fracture risk. Major wins. So there are a variety of exercises that can strengthen the extensor muscles of the spine. Some of these exercises are done down on the mat, and others are done from a seated or even a standing position. Keep in mind with exercises that it's okay to choose exercises that work best in your body. You do not need to do all combinations of exercises that are intended to strengthen the extensor muscles of the spine. Instead, find options that work with your body and your individual needs. The exercises that I'm going to share momentarily can all be done from a seated or from a standing position. I have some other videos on this channel that have exercises that will strengthen the extensor muscles of the spine that include getting down to the mat. And I'm actually going to list those videos in the description for this video, along with the scientific study that I mentioned earlier, so that you can explore further. For the first exercise, you can either sit or stand, making sure that you have good posture and that you're in an upright position. We're going to use a resistance band to open our chest while strengthening our extensor muscles. Hold your resistance band out in front of you at chest height. Pull your band apart, pulling your shoulder blades closer together at the same time, and then return to your starting position. Usually when I teach a class, I go back and forth between several different exercises with this one in the mix. I usually do this one 5 times, and then I do other exercises and come back to doing this one again for another 5 times. This is an exercise that if done on its own, you could do it between 8 and 10 times to form a set. You could work your way up to doing 2 or even 3 sets. Personally, I would do a set and then switch to a different exercise before coming back to this exercise. Our bodies do better when we mix up what we're doing and we give our muscles the opportunity to recover in between sets. The second exercise to do with the resistance band is to lift your band slowly up overhead with control and then to lower it back down again. Use the same approach with working your way up to doing 8 to 10 of these as a set, switching to different exercises and then coming back to do a second set of this particular exercise. For the third exercise, we're going to set our resistance bands on the back of the chair, and then you can either sit or stand with your feet about hip width apart. We're going to do a W arm lift. So bring your arms out by your shoulders with your elbows bent facing up towards the sky. From here, lift your arms up a couple of inches and hold them there for about 2 seconds. Then lower them back to your starting position. Next, move your arms back a couple of inches, bringing your shoulder blades towards each other, and hold yourself there for a couple of seconds before returning to your starting position. This exercise can be repeated up to about 8 to 10 times to create a set, and then the same concept applies as with the other exercises. Switch, do a different exercise in between before coming back to do a second set of this exercise. The fourth exercise that I'll show today for strengthening the extensor muscles of the spine is the bird dog exercise done standing up at the wall. This exercise can also be done from a tabletop position on the floor, and if you would prefer to do it that way, that's totally fine. Go for it. So coming over to the wall, place your hands on the wall in front of you. Slide your right arm up the wall while taking your left leg back behind you. Hold this position for a couple of seconds and then return to your starting position. And then we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side. Slide your left arm up the wall and take your right leg back behind you, holding this position for a couple of seconds and then return to your starting position. Doing 8 to 10 of these will make a set, and then when you mix them in with other exercises, you could even work your way up to doing 2 or 3 sets of the bird dog exercise. Recovering from a compression fracture doesn't have to feel like navigating a minefield. By learning how to move safely, avoiding risky postures, and incorporating targeted exercises like the ones that we've covered today, you can protect your spine, reduce your risk of future fractures, and build a stronger and more resilient body. Remember, healing takes time, and it's important to listen to your body every step of the way. There's a distinct difference between muscle soreness and pain. A little bit of muscle soreness is all right, but pain is not. If an exercise doesn't feel right in your body, then don't do it, because there will always be another exercise that does work well in your body. Thank you for joining me today in the journey to better bone health. If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone that you know and who could benefit from this information about healing from compression fractures and reducing the risk of fractures happening in the future. Because everyone deserves the chance to heal and to feel strong and confident in their body again. And don't forget the resources that I've listed with the scientific study and with the other videos that show about safe movement and about how to spare your spine and strengthen your extensor muscles. And on that note, I look forward to talking with you soon.